Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Action Coach Northwest podcast. We're serving the greater Spokane business community. And today our guest is a principal at the Dun& Black Law Firm. His name is Adam Chambers. So welcome, Adam, and thank you for being a part today.
Hi, Ted. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Absolutely. So as you know, if you've seen one of our podcasts before, we're just interviewing business leaders around the community and contributing back to the business community. And hopefully you'll get some insights and draw some good ideas and strategies from today's session. And so we're going to jump right in, and Adam's going to answer some questions. So here we go. First question is, if you had to start from square one in business, what would you do differently?
Well, that question is a hindsight is 2020 kind of a question. At the time you don't know any better, but looking back, I would say the thing I would do differently is, well, there's a couple of them. I think I would have a better sense of what my value is in what I bring. When you start out, I think you in any industry, you're pretty self-conscious about what you're doing, and you question yourself a lot. But I think I would definitely know my value in what I do. Um, Part of that, I think, is I would focus on strengths a little bit more. I think when you first start out, you're too worried about what everybody else in the industry is doing and how they do it, and you kind of
Mm,
lose sight of yourself a little bit, I think. And so if I were to go back, I would say, hey, these are the things that I'm good at, and I've identified these things. I've been doing them my whole life. It doesn't matter what the setting is. And so I would just focus on those strengths and play to those a little bit more in starting out.
excellent. Excellent. Great insight. Thank you. That's yeah, that's very true. Okay, next question. What have your biggest learnings been as an employer since you began in business?
Uh, the biggest learnings I've had, I think, is how important communication is in really all aspects of what I'm doing, whether it's with other lawyers or employees of my firm, staff members, other partners. I think having an open communication is probably the most important thing that I've learned. You don't always hear what you want to hear from people, and
Mm,
sometimes it's easy to bury your head in the sand a little bit so you don't hear those things. But having a communication and transparency with people that you work with, I think, is probably the biggest learning. I think I've made my most strides when I get some criticism, or have the
mm.
chance to sit down with people in my firm and really talk through some of the difficulties we face.
Yeah, excellent. Communication, key piece. Yes, absolutely. Uh, what are some common misconceptions about running a business, and how do you address them?
I think a common misconception about running a business is that it needs to be an all-consuming thing of your life. I think people call it the hustle culture or the grind or whatever it is. That 24/7 you've got to be thinking about business, or you've got to be trying to very proactively talk to everybody about your business and what you do.
Hmm.
And I think that's a misconception. I think business plays a part, right? I mean, it's always going to be what you do, and it's a big priority in your life, but it doesn't need to consume every conversation you have and everything you're doing. It definitely can be part of it because it's sort of hard to separate yourself from what you do. But
Hmm.
I think keeping some perspective is always important. I went I went to law school with a guy who was from New Zealand, and I've always tried to keep this in mind. He told me that when people in New Zealand would ask, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" the answer is, I like to surf, or I fly fish, or I play rugby, or whatever it is. Um, Here you get asked, what do you do for a living? And it's, well, I'm a lawyer, or I'm a banker,
Yeah,
whatever it is. And
yeah,
so I think the misconception is, it's what you do is just that entirely forms who you are, and that's not the case. I think who you are can form what you do and how successful you are at that.
wow, great answer. I learned some things there. Thank you. That's good. Okay. Uh, what do you do? What do you attribute your growth to?
Um, I, you know, in what I do, a big part of my growth comes from my reputation. I mean, you're only as good as your last win, really. And so reputational value, I think, is a big part of growth in my business. Um, Doing quality work for clients. We have essentially a policy here. I don't know that it's a written policy, but we don't have big advertisements on bus stops, and we don't have commercials on the radio. Our marketing is largely done by word of mouth, and we get those referrals from other lawyers we've been against. We get referrals from clients we've had, and so being able to be good at the craft, so to speak, I think is what I would attribute growth to. Is just having people to see what they like, and you work hard for them, and you communicate with them and keep them up to date on what's going on in their cases. And I think people really appreciate that. So definitely those are the main attributes, or the things I would attribute growth to in my business.
Yeah. And kind of an organic growth
Yeah,
process.
organic
Yeah.
growth. Exactly. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. How do you balance your personal life with the demands of running a business?
Well, this is a big one for me because I have three boys who are 15, 12, and 9, and they're involved in
Wow.
sports and all kinds of things going on. I'm a single dad, and so I have to really focus on balancing that time. And time management obviously is a big part of it. Uh, when I was thinking about this topic specifically the other day, how do you balance this? How do you keep yourself from going crazy? Um, I thought back to my grandpa was a bow hunter, and he had this
Mm.
wooden bow that every time he was done shooting it, he would unstring it. And the reason that he would unstring that wooden bow is because the wood can learn its shape. I guess it can learn the shape of being
Mm.
strung. And if you don't unstring that bow, it loses its pop. It loses its elasticity after time if you don't unstring it every time you're done using it. And so I think about that a lot in balancing work and life, which is I'll set time aside when I'm not doing any work. I'm not emailing on my phone. I'm not texting coworkers. I just have to unstring my bow, so to speak, so that when I get back to work, I still have some elasticity. I guess I still have some pop to me,
Right.
what I feel.
Yeah. Decompress.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
decompress.
Absolutely. Okay. What qualities do you look for in employees, and how do you foster a positive and productive work environment?
The qualities that we look for, that I look for in employees and people we want to bring in. I mean, obviously, I think the easy answer is a culture fit. I think, you establish a culture in your business, and you want people that seamlessly mix in with that. But I think the positivity, obviously, the positive attributes we look for are people that are willing to collaborate. Like I said, it kind of goes hand in hand with the communication part. We like people that aren't afraid to speak their mind, and
Mhm.
aren't afraid to tell us when we're doing something wrong. We're not looking for people that come in here and it's not boot camp. We're not trying to break them down and rebuild them how we want them. We want people that come in with their own strengths, and people that come in with their own ideas. I always take a little bit of exception to this notion that people just don't want to work anymore. Well, people do want to work. People just work differently based on their personality and based on their experience. And so we're not trying to reform people to say you need to be, in your chair at 7 a.m. and you take a 30-minute break and then you leave at, 5 or 6. People work differently. And I think recognizing the people that are willing to come in and collaborate is what we look for most, and not specific like, oh, you have to fall in line in order to be successful. We'll take what you are, if you've got some of these other things like communication and positivity, and we'll be
Mhm.
able to use that and put you in an area where you'll thrive.
So it's more of a results based. You're looking for the result, not necessarily the process of how
Yeah,
they get
no,
there.
that's exactly right. It's the
Yeah.
results based. And if some people work better coming in a little bit later, or
Right.
stay a little bit later, whatever it is. I mean, it's results based. That's what we look for, is somebody who knows, like I said earlier, who knows what their strengths are and will help hone those and will help put you in a position where you can utilize those. But yeah, I mean, that's what we're looking for, is people that are, strong-willed and confident and are willing to come in and deal with a bunch of lawyers, which isn't an easy thing.
Yeah.
We argue a lot. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
kind
Well, yeah.
of the
Go
nature.
figure, lawyers, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some of the things we look for. And when we get into interviews with people, we don't have a series of, here's the checklist of questions you have to go through and get these right. And we don't have like a screening process with applications that come in. When somebody comes in, it's just a pretty open dialogue we have in an interview process to get a general sense of, how does this person present themselves when faced with
Mhm.
three lawyers sitting across the table from them, asking them, some difficult questions.
Yeah. Do you use any sort of assessments in your hiring process?
We do
Like,
not use any sort of assessments. It's all,
okay,
like you said earlier, I guess, organic. We don't have anything that's,
right.
here are the pre-qualifications. I mean, we've got people from all educational backgrounds, and yeah, there's not really any formal assessment we do.
Yeah. Well, there's like DISC and a bunch of different ones out there, but I was just curious. Okay. So what question should I be asking you that I haven't?
Um, I don't know if it's a question you should be asking me, or if it's a just sort of a general philosophy that I kind of developed. But maybe the question is, how important is creativity in being a lawyer?
Mm,
So, like I said earlier, it's important to focus on strengths, and especially in the law. I mean, how the law is so broad that you can't really get tied down in trying to know every area of law. You've got to pick the things that you know, or the things that you practice in, so that you've got to, you don't want to have an inch deep, mile wide knowledge of the law. Really, you want to have depth in certain areas. And so that's an important aspect. But uh, one thing that I and a few other partners at my firm and associates have tried to do is, if there's an area that we have a sort of a passion about or an enthusiasm about, even if the firm hasn't really practiced in that area, um, we'll let people explore those areas of law. And I think it's similar to Google. They have that 20% rule, where they say 20% of the week of Google employees should be spent on these passion projects. And that's
yeah.
how like Gmail was created. Is these Google employees got together and said, hey, we hate the email services out there, we think we could do a better one. And so I do a similar thing, where I try and find areas that I say, okay, I'm going to spend 10 or 20% of my time trying to do some things that might not be in my typical wheelhouse, or my everyday thing. But if it's something that I'm passionate about or have an interest in, I'll spend some time pursuing that. And it's led to some interesting cases. It's led to some interesting clients, but it breaks up, I think, the monotony of what I do by having, allowing some creativity even in a pretty rigid field.
Interesting. Like it. Okay. Wow. Last question. You're sailing through here. It's good. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And any words of advice for other business owners who are looking to grow their business?
Well, in 5 years, I suppose I'd like to say I'd be, one of the most recognizable lawyers in Spokane, or in the Spokane Coeur d'Alene area. But I think, realistically, I want to we want to grow our firm, and we want to grow our practice. Um, I'd like to, I'm kind of on this path. I've been practicing for 11 years, and when you're early on in your career, you have to take on some cases that maybe you wouldn't want to do, or you take on clients that you don't necessarily love to work with. But in
Hmm.
5 years, I'd like to be completely at a point where I get to be purely selective about the types of cases I take on and the types of people I work with. And have a firm and coworkers and partners that are all supportive of that. And we're on a good path to get there. And so that's, I think, like every other business, principal, or somebody who's involved with the with running a company, we want it to be bigger. We want to, have more clients. We want to have a bigger staff and more attorneys working for us. And so just growth in general. As far as advice I might give to other business owners or people who run businesses, um, I always it always goes back to me on focusing on strengths. If I know what you're good at and really pursue those things, uh, you know, I I I like to go to Five Guys because I can go to Five Guys and there's like five things on the menu. There's burgers and there's fries. I mean, there's that's what they do and that's what they're good at, and they know what kind of their bread and butter is. They're not trying to throw tacos on the menu. And you go into some restaurants and it's like you can get Chinese food and Mexican food and hamburger. There's a whole list of different things. But I think just focus on the thing you're good at, focus on the thing that you want to do. And when you do it that way, your business grows in a direction you want it to. And it seems to grow quickly when you're focusing on areas that you love and that you're good at.
So, finding your niche or niche.
Exactly. Finding your niche. Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
Probably the more succinct way to put it.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, Adam. Adam Chambers, principal at Dunn and Black Law Firm here in Spokane. And great insights. And yeah, you're welcome. And we're gonna have we'll have this up in a while and share it around the business community. And well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You bet.